Hello everyone, I'm Lane Nordland with the Western Ag Network, and I'm on the road today in Fort Worth, Texas at the 158th American Sheep Industry Association Convention. The annual event is an opportunity for sheep producers from across the country to meet and discuss topics and issues within the industry. It's the one time each year in which all sections of the industry come together in one location to set priorities, share information, and conduct business for a stronger sheep industry. Now, throughout the convention, we will be having conversations with industry leaders and stakeholders who work each day to advance the U.S. sheep industry. Texas is the biggest producer of sheep in the nation. So we have a lot of attendees from here in the Texas region attending, but also from across the nation as well. And a little closer to Western Ag Network country, we are joined today by Glen Rock, Wyoming's Mr. Brad Boner. Brad is Vice President of the American Sheep Industry Association, soon to be President of the association. And Brad, as we gather here in Fort Worth, it's a little more snow and cold weather up north there in your country.
Yeah, we're tickled to get out of the winter time for a little bit, and sunshine today and 65 degrees in Fort Worth, pretty hard to beat.
So. Pretty hard, and I always say it's always cold when I come to Fort Worth. I've been here a lot of times, and it's always raining, so it's actually really nice to have that sunshine and just behind us.
Yes,
but you know, it's with all that moisture and whatnot. I know we were talking last night. There's a lot of struggles that producers are facing, but you've had to feed a little more this year as a result of all that weather.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think a big chunk of the Rocky Mountain West has had record snowfalls basically for this early in the season, and so you know it's called grass tax. Everything comes at a price, and you know we're thankful that the patterns changed. You know, in a perfect world, it'd been nice if it would changed in April, but here we are. So.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing about it, as we gather here with producers from all different types of operations, large operations, medium, small sized, we're all here to advocate for the future of the sheep industry. And as you move into the role for the next 2 years as president of ASI, is it 2 years? Is that correct?
Yes.
Of ASI. What are some of those goals that you would like to work with the members of the executive committee, the staff, and just all the producers in the countryside in helping advance the sheep industry?
Yeah, I think our number one goal for the next year is obviously working with congressional people and staff to see the Farm Bill get put into reauthorized and put into implementation. As people may or may not know, that expires on September 30th of this year. So the work has begun on a new Farm Bill. The sheep industry has a big stake of our going forward abilities involved in that bill. So we'll be spending a lot of time and effort on the Farm Bill. You know, a few things that we want to try to push forward there, and so that'll take up a chunk of 2023. Hopefully it gets authorized on time. There's debate whether that's going to happen or not, but whatever it takes, we'll continue to work on that. So that's number one. You know, number two is continue to improve upon our communications within ASI with our not only our member states but our producer members who are members of those state organizations. Communications is always something that easily falls off the table if you aren't paying attention to it all the time. So we'll continue to focus on communication and trying to get our story out there of what ASI does for the industry and hopefully communication back from our grassroots about what we need to be doing for them.
Now, in agriculture and for consumers, sustainability and regenerative agriculture, two of the big buzzwords that I think kind of go hand in hand. But as we look at sustainable agriculture, I always say that comes into environmental sustainability, but also sustainability on the profitability end of things too. So can we, what is that platform looking like for ASI in terms of that sustainability goal in reaching out to producers who are already most likely putting all these practices in place, but also educating consumers on the sustainability of both wool and lamb?
Yeah, I think it is an education process, as you mentioned, and you know, we just have to get our story out there. We've got a great story to tell. We are one of the most environmentally friendly pieces of agriculture out there, and we just need to get our story out there, which is sometimes a little burdensome, but we need to do it, and just continue to work on that piece. And you're right, you can't be sustainably environmentally if you're not sustainable properly, because you're gone. You aren't there anymore, which may or may not be some people's goal, but we'll continue to work on that. They have to go hand in hand. Yeah, sustainability is the buzzword of the day, and for good reason. I think as producers, we always are looking to improve our take-up of new technologies and how we can improve on our efficiencies and be better producers, and we'll continue to do that and push research and try to be better all the time.
And with that, that also ties into that next generation or first generation coming into the sheep business. What are some of those tools and resources available for those starting their own flocks or taking over a family operation, or like I said, that first generation that could be brand new to the business?
Right. So number one is we have our sheep production handbook, which is 1,000 pages and it's available online now, a searchable database that people can go to and search whatever topic they want to search, that has tons of information for first-time producers on the species that we're working with, the ovine species, and lots of information there generated from years and years of research and production practices. So that's number one. And number two, lots of webinars available on our website. I think we're up to like 400 webinars now on a variety of topics, also searchable, and you can pick the webinar archived, all those things. So pick the webinar of your choice and all those things. We continue to try to grow in the social media arena and podcasts and those guys. We now have a monthly podcast available, and so as we move forward, the only thing constantly is change, right? And we're constantly changing and trying to grow with the new technologies that are out there.
Well, it is a great opportunity, all those resources for those transitioning into an operation or first generation producers. And also I should mention the Young Entrepreneurs program that is also helping advance the role of the sheep industry and giving these young producers an opportunity to learn more about every aspect of the sheep industry, not only here in the U.S. but across the world, and the role they play in it. But Brad, thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you, Lane.
And again, good luck in the year ahead as you become president, and hopefully the moisture keeps coming.
There you go.
Yeah, it's better to buy hay when that moisture is coming, right?
It is, exactly, yes.
Well, friends, that will do it for our conversation here with Glen Rock, Wyoming's Brad Boner. More to come from the Sheep Industry Association Convention here in Fort Worth. Returning back today from Fort Worth, Texas, at the 158th meeting of the American Sheep Industry Association, we are joined by a Texan, the one and only Benny Cox. And Benny, you are a past president of the American Sheep Industry Association. You're wrapping up your term on the executive board as well, but we're here in Texas, and of course you operate the Producers Livestock there in San Angelo, the largest sheep and goat auction in the nation. I actually did not realize that Texas is the biggest sheep producing state, and all of our viewers and listeners tuning in today maybe didn't realize that either. Let's talk about the sheep industry's impact here in Texas on not only the state's agriculture economy, but the nation as well.
Yeah, I manage the sheep aspect of it. We sell cattle as well, but we became the largest sheep auction years ago. Back in could have been the latter part of the 50s, but definitely in the early 60s, it gained that title. And now you have to say sheep and goat sales, because we sell about 50% goats,
Yep.
somewhere in 40 plus. Of course, Fort Worth was a pivotal place for marketing. They opened in 1890. They had 206 acres, and they could hold, in one given day, they could hold like 37,000 cattle, 20,000 hogs, 20,000 sheep, and 5,000 horses and mules. Believe it or not, 5,000 horses and mules in one spot. But anyway, that was, and so most of the larger groups of livestock came here to the Fort Worth stockyards and were marketed out of there. They had a number of commission companies, let's say 15 commission companies. You would consign to those companies. And so that's where most of the livestock were sold, especially the bigger bunches from my area and all around. In 1931, they sold over 1 million sheep that given year through the stockyards. In the mid 1950s, a system like ours, the competitive bid, where they go through a ring, took over, and the stockyards started to slow down. They actually started a sale much like that and closed in 1992.
Wow.
So it's, this is known as Cowtown.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
And we're not too far from the historic stockyards. And Benny, as we mentioned, you've served in leadership with the American Sheep Industry Association. And I guess as we look at those opportunities for sheep producers, the ethnic market is truly one of those key aspects of profitability nowadays. And when we use the term ethnic market, what does that mean? Who are those buyers and what are they buying and how important are they for the future of the industry here for producers?
Well, when you say ethnic, a lot of people just automatically think Muslim. That's not necessarily so. They may not all be Muslim, but many of the people, Middle Eastern people, Mediterranean people, most of those people from the far west, they've consumed goat or lamb or both most of their life. Now we're looking into maybe the second, maybe even the fourth generation being born over here, but they are big consumers of sheep and goat. Sheep and goats are bought on a weekly basis from our sale and go to many parts of the United States. A lot of demand in Texas, Houston, Dallas-Fort Worth area, Austin, San Antonio, your bigger metropolitan areas. There's a lot of different ethnicities there, or people that consume. And so there's a lot of demand in Texas, but we have buyers that send sheep to Pennsylvania every week. Florida never shut down during the COVID. Every week they go all the way to Florida. So they leave our facility and go a lot of different directions. We'll have an ethnic panel tomorrow in our programming. There's a lot of educational things at this meeting. That's what's good about it. And I have one guy who actually has a facility in Pennsylvania. It's about 20 miles from New Holland, which is well known to the ethnic groups there. And he has two facilities in San Angelo. He operates a good deal. And then another of those panelists will be a Muslim guy, Hamid Ibram. He's got a slaughter facility and a restaurant in the Austin area. And we're kind of excited about that. Erica Sanko, a lot of people know her. It was her baby, and I'm just helping her execute it.
And what do you hope the attendees that are able to sit in and listen to this panel, what are those key things that you hope they learn from these important consumers of American lamb and goat?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that will come out in this. This is a good year for this to happen because the traditional market has not been good. And so those lambs got so cheap up to the north and to the west, those larger groups of basically wool sheep, and we'll touch on that in a second. Wool sheep, a lot of the big handlers down here have gone up there and bought those lambs. Somebody could handle it. Of course, they had to be able to handle a truckload. It's a long ways to South Dakota, about 1,000 miles away, I figure it. And they're getting those lambs from up there. And I know Ibram, one of the panelists, he got a load last week, and I know he got one like 2 weeks ago. They may be just about cleaned up with the lambs up north. I don't know that. What to do. But there's been opportunity. It's actually kept our market from getting crazy good between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which has happened for a number of years, 7, 8, 10 years. Our market showed a big improvement the week before we shut down for the Christmas holiday, and they've taken all that back off. It was the shutdown was the reason, and supply and all that stuff. But so it's had a trickle-down effect on us, but it's also made those lambs worth more up north, and those guys helped to drive that market back up to a better level than it was at the get-go.
It was tough watching those sales, whether it be the video auctions or just sheep going through the ring. So it has been nice to see those prices more supported up in our region. But operating that livestock auction and also just being in this aspect of the industry, how do you feel moving into 2023? Obviously, there's a lot of issues in terms of input costs, the cost of labor, but from that marketing angle, how are you feeling moving into 2023?
I feel like through all the information, the availability of frozen product and all that stuff, I think we're going to have to get past this deal, and it's not going to happen it's not going to be tomorrow or the next day. I think it may last longer than we would like for it to. But I can assure you the ethnic market is the driving force today. And I'm not saying that just because we're a totally ethnic driven market. I'm just saying that because I'm knowledgeable of things that happen around the nation, not just in Texas, and there's a lot of challenges out there. It's unfortunate that this has happened. You know, the retail business gained a lot through the COVID situation, and we lost it all. We priced ourselves out of business, is my opinion, and I think that opinion is shared by many. Sometimes you just kind of let it get ahead of you, and they lost that retail business that they gained after the first 3 or 4 months of COVID. You know, it really turned upside down at the end of March, about 3 years ago now, right? Almost. And then we gained a lot of retail newcomers. You know, your millennials and your Gen Z, is that what they call them?
Yeah, I think that's
so.
yeah.
Anyway, you know, the people that use the phone all the time. But there was a lot of business gained by that. But we priced ourselves out of that business, and we've lost over 30% of that retail business that we gained at that period of time. You know, they just got too high.
Well, it's going to be great hearing all the thoughts on what the future has in store for the lamb and wool industries here at the 158th American Sheep Industry Association Convention. Benny Cox, thanks for joining us here today.
Sure.
San Angelo, Texas, producers livestock. We'll have more from the American Sheep Industry Association here in Fort Worth. As the American Sheep Industry Association Convention continues in Fort Worth, Texas, attendees are always looking for the latest information and research to better not only their flocks, but their grazing lands as well. And today we are joined by Dan Macon. He is of California with the Flying Mule Sheep Company, and also you're a county extension agent with the Cooperative Extension Service out there in California. And grazing and targeted grazing, very important topics for students of rangeland or just the ecosystems in general. And you mentioned to me before we started our conversation here is you like to share that grazing is a service. And that's so important, I guess, when we phrase it that way, when we're trying to educate not only producers about better grazing systems, but also the public about the role that, say, sheep play in the grazing system as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. California, like much of the West, has had some amazing experience with out-of-control wildfires in the last 5 or 6 years. And one of the things that we've discovered is with the scale of landscape that we need to treat, there's no better animal to do it than sheep. And so we've really seen an expansion in sheep operations in our part of the world, including some of the larger scale commercial operations, looking at both their production system, but also their ability to provide that service and to get paid to do it. And I think that's been the real key in the expansion of that particular enterprise for a lot of our producers. So they're getting paid to provide that service now.
Well, and you look at the conversations, especially from the environmental community, that really is always against grazing, say, on federal lands.
Right.
And sheep play a key role in forest management in this wildfire conversation. What has that been like to go through some of these processes and have conversations with people that maybe don't understand that multi-use doctrine that takes place on the countryside with this targeted grazing and research?
You know, I think the severity of our fires in the last couple of years has really changed that conversation. And we can point to places on the landscape now where we've had grazing that was well managed and where our fire service could come in and knock down a wildfire that otherwise would not have been controllable. So I think it's changed that conversation to a large degree. We still have issues around some of the endangered species issues on federal lands that we try to help the environmental community understand. But I think the fact that we can target particular times of year and particular types of vegetation so precisely with sheep and with goats to some extent, that it's changed the story quite a bit, which is really exciting. I think it's opened more doors for us in California, to the point where our Forest Service is actually looking to contract with sheep producers to treat areas outside of their allotment system. So huge new opportunities for folks.
Now, and you talk about opportunity, and you mentioned it when you're talking about utilizing sheep as a grazing tool to help really manage the forage in that wildfire conversation. What has been some of the results of that profitability with folks getting paid to come in and take that growth out?
You know, it has allowed people to expand their operations because there's another revenue stream in those businesses now. But I also think the other kind of side benefit to it, and it goes beyond the profitability question, is that we've got sheep grazing adjacent to urban communities like Oakland and in my area in Sacramento, where we're starting to see folks in town realize that the animals are having a real benefit for them. And I think that has changed public attitude to the degree that we're now seeing other agencies look to grazing as a tool that can compete with mechanical treatment, or can certainly compete with herbicide treatment. Grazing is really the only tool that's out there that removes flammable material from the landscape. And so I think we've got a great story to tell in that regard. And the fact that those producers are providing a service now has really generated a new revenue source that's allowed us to deal with increased labor costs and some of the other issues that we talk about here at ASI.
And also, as we look to furthering research and the targeted grazing handbook that is so essential to the producers attending this event or that are out in the countryside, you mentioned that you are doing some research now to just make some updates to that as well.
We are. Dr. John Walker from down here at Texas A&M has really been leading that effort. The original targeted grazing handbook did a great job of spelling out how grazing would be effective. I think the next step is to really educate producers about how to shift from a production focus to a service focus, and what that means in terms of contracting and liability and those other elements that come with grazing in the public.
And Dan, what's a message that you have for a producer? Maybe they're up in the northern states, or maybe they're on the East Coast or Middle America. Well, what's a message that you have for them on some resources or ways that they can just better themselves as grazers and users of our natural resources?
I think tapping into the extension system is a really important aspect of that, and I think extension evolves to meet those needs. So looking for folks in your community that can provide some of that research-based information. I think ASI has really done a great job of focusing on this as a service-based industry, and so participating in your state wool growers and in ASI really allows you to network with those other producers. I think in terms of the research, really thinking about the times of the year in your operation when you've got some flexibility in terms of nutrition or where the animals need to be, and looking for opportunities to capitalize on that flexibility.
And one last little question, how did the operation get the Flying Mule name? I'm curious now.
You want the short story or the long story?
Well, we got a few seconds left here, but yeah.
So we actually raise a crossbreed of sheep that in the UK is called mules. We also have the real mules, the equine mules on our place, and one of them was named by my daughter, named the mule Frisbee, and hence we have flying mules of all kinds at our place.
I love it. Again, Dan Macon joining us here at the American Sheep Industry Association. As he mentioned, for more on grazing and how important it is to your operation and to the ecosystem, reach out to your state association and cooperative extension as well. Thanks for joining us here today on our broadcast from Fort Worth. Follow along here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter for more of our conversations on the road here in Fort Worth.